Hello, today is Thursday, April 22nd, 2022. My name is Megan Rodriguez, and I'm interviewing Vicente Mendoza for the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University-Kingsville. This is part of the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History Project in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Mr. Mendoza, that this recorded interview will be placed in the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University-Kingsville and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, especially given that your recording may appear online, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting, so I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 4 questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University-Kingsville wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation at the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University-Kingsville. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other material you donate to South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University-Kingsville. Do you give us consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University-Kingsville?
Yes, I agree.
Do you grant South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University-Kingsville copyright over the interview and any material you provide?
Yes, I agree.
Do you agree to allow South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University-Kingsville to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I agree.
Do you grant South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University-Kingsville consent to share your interview and your materials with Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History Project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes, I agree.
All right. We have many questions in a pre-interview form that we have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voices server at the University of Texas at Austin. The final storing of the pre-interview form will be at the South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University-Kingsville. We will have stripped out any contact information for yourself or your family members, so that will not be a part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Jernigan Library. All right. So I'm just going to start with a few questions. So first, before we start, do you want to introduce yourself? Give us a little bit of details about who you are, what you do at school.
My name is Vicente Mendoza. Currently go to Texas A&M University-Kingsville. I am a second-year music performance major, and I am studying saxophone.
Awesome. So just to let everyone know, we are friends outside of school. So I will be asking you questions about music, because since we're both music education majors or music performance majors. So yeah, and go ahead and answer all these questions in detail. I'll be asking you about COVID and COVID-19 and the experiences that you've had during the pandemic. So the first question is, tell me a little bit about your experience with COVID-19.
Um, I've only really had one experience with COVID-19. I got COVID-19, and I'm probably the only one in my family that ever got COVID-19. I'm trying to remember, but yeah, and it was not a good, wasn't a good situation that I found myself in. You know, self quarantining here in Kingsville, not going home because this happened before Christmas. So it wasn't really easy, and I was self quarantining in a dorm room here in Kingsville, an abandoned dorm room that was used for only people who got positive for COVID, and they didn't have anywhere to go. So it wasn't a good situation I found myself in, but I came out of it. Yeah.
All right. And how did you first learn about COVID-19?
first learned about COVID-19 was I was at a convention in San Antonio. This was around February, early February, and people were talking about it there, and I was thinking that it might be there. This was before the whole pandemic happened. It hasn't even reached the U.S. yet, so many people were pretty scared, and there was like thousands of people in that convention. So that's where I first heard about it.
Mhm. And what was your first reaction to the information about COVID-19? How did you feel?
Um, well, I wasn't really like I guess I wasn't worried at all because we've had many viruses like Ebola and stuff like that, and where we were able to contain it in a matter of a little bit of time, and I didn't really think much of it until it got worse and we weren't able to contain it. Yeah.
So, back to when you mentioned how you only had one experience with COVID and you only got it that one time. Um, is that when you realized like how serious it was, and what did you do like to take care of yourself afterwards?
Well, yeah, that's like my first time, like that moment when I found out was, uh, I still remember like I was scared because I didn't know what was gonna happen, and after I got better, I started taking it more seriously. Not that I wasn't taking it seriously back then. It's I could have done things better, be more mindful of who I was with and where I was going most of the time. So yeah.
Okay. And when so I guess like how did COVID-19 impact like not only just you but your family? Did you guys attend church often back home? And did it change like your daily lives, like maybe how often you went to church or um, to work? And you could even talk about um, whenever you went to the grocery store.
Well, it changed. It changed pretty. There was a big change in our family. My mom's on the older side, almost to her 60s, and she has like many health like back when she was younger, she had health issues that that have weakened her immune system. So we had to take COVID a little more seriously. Um, with going to church, like to be honest, I'm not religious, but my parents are very religious. But they stopped going to church when this happened, and they would attend online. They gave my parents the option. Grocery stores, my dad would be the one going most of the time. My mom would probably go early in the morning. So there was a point in time where they would allow people around 60 and up to go to the grocery stores, and there's certain hours so they won't like be around other people. So that's when my mom would go out. But for the most part, we stayed in our house or in our own yard, just nowhere near off our house.
And how would you describe the world during COVID-19 compared to pre-COVID? So, what are some things that you remember that drastically changed about going out?
I felt like more people got there was more mental issues going on because a lot of people weren't going out, and some people are alone. So when you don't have any contact with people, like physical contact takes a toll on the mind, and you know it was a really bad rough patch those first 3 4 months before kind of started letting going back out, and but with a lot of precaution. It wasn't that great, to be honest.
And how did you feel about wearing masks at first?
Well, I've never worn like a mask like that ever. I really think I've ever worn a mask. I've never really like. I usually see people with those masks when they have like the flu or something like that, but I've never worn a mask like that until COVID. And I don't mind the masks. They're a little annoying, but it's the best way to keep ourselves safe and everyone else around us safe. So yeah.
And did you have any essential workers in your family that you heard like any experiences about?
Oh well, my aunt, a few months before COVID came, she retired as a nurse, and she she was told she had to come out of retirement and go to the hospitals and work. If not, she would lose her license. And according to her, people were dying every day, so it took a toll. And you know, when they were telling people that they had to be put on ventilators, like they knew they're not coming out of that. So it was pretty tough on her.
And did that affect or did COVID-19 in general affect your mental health personally? And you don't have to answer that question if it's too personal, but
No, not really. Like, no, it did. Like, I don't know. Like, I wasn't going through much. I didn't get depression. It got a little lonely, I guess. Like, but I was always that was a time when I started going back to gaming because I gave up gaming when I went to high school, being a busy schedule with band and all that. But when COVID came back, or when COVID came, um, I went back to gaming because I had nothing else to do. So being being on with my friends, really helped me not have any like mental issues. I guess you get what I mean. I was always on, and I always had someone to talk to there. So it did feel not it didn't feel normal at first, but it became normal after a while.
yeah, I definitely understand that. All right. So I more or less understand how you handled COVID at home. So now knowing that you're a music major, you are music performance, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So how was it like when you found out that we had to go back to school and you realized like all your classes, especially music classes, were going to be different? What was your reaction and how did you feel and what were the things that they required for you to do?
Well, they gave us the option to, not go to campus. We could be at home and do everything online. But I chose to come back, like come to school. And I wanted to get the college experience. I wasn't gonna allow this to, take away from that. So I came to Kingsville, and what I first noticed was we didn't have fully online classes. We had hybrid classes where they wanted us to still have the opportunity to learn in like classroom setting. So it really helped with being able to learn how people would do pre-COVID, and that I really enjoyed that because my last 3 months of senior year, because that's when COVID happened. I went fully online, so I got pretty lazy pretty quick. So, being able to have hybrid, it made me not be lazy, and actually I had to work. Just I couldn't be lazy.
And what was the workload like? Was there enough to do or was it sometimes not demanding enough since there was online classes?
And you're asking for my first semester of college, or
Yeah, in college.
I felt like there was too much to do. We still got the same workload as a regular student. We had different means of doing it. We Instead of turning it in person, we turned it in online. We got a daily homework, your training. I had English class, so I still had to do English essays. And what else did I have? No, I still did like music classes, like band and jazz band, and I had to save hours to practice for that in my lesson. So I was always busy. It was probably busiest I've ever been up until that point.
Awesome. And how would you describe the way that they handled ensembles and actually playing in band? So what were the types of things that they had you do?
So I was in jazz band and the Wind Symphony here in Kingsville that semester when I came to Kingsville. For the Wind Symphony, we we didn't play it as a full ensemble. We would we would cut the band in half, and have half of the band would play this one piece and do the 6 feet distance that CDC required us to do, and the other half would do the same thing but in a different piece. Which we still got the experience of playing in a band still, but we just had to do it differently. We had to use bell covers to stop the spread of particles. We would have face play masks where it was basically masks with a slit in the middle where we could put our mouthpiece in so we could play, and when we're not playing, we can close it up and be safe. And then for jazz band, we had to change the setup a little different. So instead of having 3 rows back to back, we would do would have we would kind of like line up. So the room is a square, so we would line up. So like the front side of the room is saxophones, the left side of the room is trumpets, the right side of the room is trombones, and then the back side of the room would be um, the rhythm section. So we all were 6 feet apart. So it was a little different from what we're used to from having 3 back-to-back lines. But it worked out. It worked out for the end. And when we got to actual performances for jazz band, we would kind of change that up a bit. That square up a bit for performances would have like a triangle to keep that 6 feet distance, and it worked out pretty good.
Wow, I didn't know that. So, did, with all those precautions that they took, did you feel like absolutely safe in regards to COVID?
Yeah, I felt really safe. I think for jazz band, I think only one person that entire semester got COVID, and it wasn't because of him going to school. It was because of his mom working as a nurse. And then for Winston, I don't think probably 2 people got COVID, and but we all kept this distance, and we did it safe. So none of us that were in close contact with them, or not close contact, but near them, we didn't really have to worry about getting COVID because we took all these precautions, and even though we would get tested, we would come out negative. So that was a good thing.
And since bringing that up and like other people getting positive for COVID and whatnot, how do you think that South Texas in general handled COVID? Do you think the cases were reasonably and like had reasonable numbers, or do you think we were handling it not well enough in general?
I don't know. For South Texas, it was a little different. So like if you go down to the valley, it was handled really badly. Like I think it was like one of the worst hit cities like in the United States. And then you have other instances of small towns like Kingsville. It's in South Texas, but not the valley, where the cases weren't that much. We weren't getting hundreds a day of new positives. We're getting maybe in the 20s. So different cities or towns took it differently. Where I'm from, Laredo, it got hit pretty hard, but it still didn't like affect like the major population, unlike the valley. So it just depends on the city, honestly.
All right. So, veering back to school, what challenges did you face at school or because of all the protocols and stuff? So maybe like your practice schedule, maybe you had plans to work while you were at school. Did any of that change or was any of that hard?
Um, what changed was like, if we got sick, that would basically derail us from our entire like what we have going on planned. We had to just drop everything and just self isolate. That was a little annoying. Um, what else? I'm trying to think. Um, let's come back to it because I had something and I forgot it.
It's okay. Um, so for now, I could ask you maybe specific questions. So ear training, that is a class that is very hard for music majors, and you basically have to work with a professor and learn everything by ear, and it's basically music theory but through your ear. So how did you handle that, especially being a freshman, like handling ear training for the first time, and it was during the pandemic, it wasn't in person. How did you feel about that, and did you feel like you would get through it at the time?
Well, I was kind of worried about ear training before coming in because my ears weren't that good coming into college. I couldn't even sing. I couldn't match pitch or anything. But I had a good professor, and I was able to catch on ear training quite quickly. I had to practice a lot first couple of weeks. Just to get my ear going. But once it was going by, I'm gonna say like early October. I, I was I was good at air training towards the end, and from October to the end of the semester, I was pretty good. It did make it a little hard for whenever we had like pop quizzes on singing and some tests. It made it a little hard. We would be online and we'd have to ask our professor to repeat the line again because her audio cut off something like that. So it was a little harder to learn online, but I didn't really struggle that much. Just something we had to adapt to.
That's good. So, where before COVID happened, were you planning on working maybe before school started or before you started college or during college?
Well, I wanted to work this summer going into college just so I could have some money and be able to pay for college because um, I think the only thing that wasn't going to be paid for because I had most of my tuition paid for by the School of Music here. The thing that I was worried about was my dorm room situation and my meal plan. So I wanted to work, but most places were in Laredo did not take many people in because they wanted to keep their crew a little smaller so they could stop the spread of COVID. So I didn't really get hired anywhere. So being able to pay for college was a little harder.
And when you attended school or when you attended college, did TAMU provide any financial help for maybe like the CARES Act, or did you get any of that?
So for the first year, they had the CARES Act, and the CARES Act, I was fortunate enough to get it, and that helped me a ton just to pay for my dorm and my meal plan, which was around 4,000 that I had to pay, and it covered all of that, which was it was a great thing. I was very happy. The second year, I'm in my second year currently. They offered us a HERF grant each semester that my fall semester and this semester, and it wasn't that much money, but it was money that I could use for food, gas, books, and it helped out a lot.
And do you think you would have found any like similar opportunity like that if there wasn't COVID?
Uh, I don't think so, to be honest. That was like the only gift I got from COVID, money. Because money it was an issue for me and my family. So being able to get this money in and help pay for college really worked out. Yeah.
That's good. So, a little bit back on the music track, what were some things that came about in the music world that you really enjoyed? So, for example, whether it was live online performances or um, various new works from composers all around the world sharing their music online. What were your some of your favorite things that came about?
Some of my favorite things were, um, composers were really like they're writing music or um, changing up the music in a way like written out music that they've published um, in previous years and being able to change it a little bit so you could be able to do it online. That is what I like that was done because a lot of us couldn't have our final concert or band or anything. So that was something that we were able to do. And because of it, I ended up making a group with two friends of mine, and we grew the group. And this is just purely saxophonists. We grew the group from just Texas to all the United States. We have people from all around, and we were able to do just small ensembles and doing this online. Like we had someone from New York play with us, and we probably would never get to play with a person from New York. And yeah, it just music community really got together and adapted to the new way of playing music. And that's online music.
And what were some things that you remember happening to the music community? So, there obviously was negative side effects to a lot of programs around the United States, whether it was like high school, public schools, and private institutions. What were some things that you remember happened to a lot of the music programs?
I noticed like I think a big worry for me was I started noticing like middle schools like they were struggling a little more because you're barely going into music for the first time, touching an instrument for the first time, and you can't really learn it that well because you don't have a teacher with you. You have to do it online, and I noticed that those like 2 years of like sixth graders, they didn't really properly learn the saxophone or not saxophone, any instrument they did, and even seventh graders. And I saw that, and I would help out here in local middle school. I think the year that the code was pretty bad, my first year of college, and I noticed like a little decrease in playing. So that was a little sad that this happened not just in the United States but all over.
So, on that topic, in the future, if a pandemic were to ever happen again, do you have any advice for music educators maintaining their programs during, this whole online stuff? Is there anything that you can give them to help them with their programs and their students?
And to be honest, there's really not much we could do. Like a lot of students, especially the younger students, don't learn that well online. A lot of them are very very hyper and they're just young, so it's really really hard. But what I would say is have patience and really work with them online and not just give them busy work like, oh, here, learn a song. Don't do that. Actually work with them online on Zoom. Give them private lessons, a 20-minute private lesson on Zoom. That's my advice.
All right, thank you. So let's steer off from the education part for a little bit, or from the Temuk stuff that we were talking about and music. So back to when you got your first vaccination. What was that like?
Well, I wanted to get vaccinated once I found out there was a vaccine, but living in Laredo, they only gave them to like, they gave them to certain groups at a time. So it first started with like frontline workers and elderly people or people with health issues. So I wasn't able to get one in Laredo. So when I went to my second semester for college, being in Kingsville, a little small town, they got so many doses of of the vaccine where they were able to just give them out to anybody on a first come first served basis. So I was able to get my first vaccine like pretty early, while many people had to wait a few months.
And did you have any after side effects? Were they the ones that they described from the CDC, or did you feel anything different?
For the first dose, I did not get any side effects. I only had like a sore arm. But for the second dose, you know, I got everything that CDC warned about of getting. So I ended up getting chills. I had body aches. I felt really, really sick. But it was just for a day, and I felt a lot better the next morning.
All right. And you kind of mentioned this earlier, how your mom took, or your family had to take extra precautions because your mom had a little bit of health issues. Were there any other concerns in your family that you could think about that you were being very like careful and cautious about?
To be honest, there really wasn't many like worries. Like most of us were young. I guess the second worry we had on my mind was what on our mind was me because I have asthma, but that was like I guess the second thing to worry about. But it wasn't that big of a deal. Me, my brother, and my dad. We're pretty young, so we had confidence in ourselves to be able to fight this. Get what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. And was your family at all opposed to getting the vaccine at first, or were you guys just super okay with getting the vaccine as soon as you heard about it?
Well, when we first heard about it, my my parents waited like maybe some more news, but they got it maybe like 2 months after I did. So like they didn't really wait that long. Um, they got theirs probably around March. So that was like maybe 4 or 5 months after it came out. They ended up getting it.
All right. And were so your parents are religious and did go to church. Did their church provide any of the any resources regarding COVID-19,
Uh,
like tests or um, masks and such?
to be honest, from what because I'm not really religious, and I don't go to church. From what my parents told me, they didn't really do much. I think they only gave out masks like in the entrance. But other than that, like they wouldn't even require you to wear a mask. 'Cause a lot of people there they didn't really believe in masks. So
Oh, okay. So, in regards to politics, how do you believe politics affected how COVID has been handled?
well, both sides of the spectrum. I guess they took it. They used they used COVID-19 as I guess their ammunition for their policies and stuff like that. It was pretty dumb because this is something that we shouldn't bring into politics. It's just like just listen to your doctors. Listen to the professionals, not listen to a let's say a politician that has no experience in medicine saying we don't need a vaccine or have any of these mandates to keep people safe. It was bad time for politics. I felt like more people they resented each other more from what I saw.
And speaking of politics, do you remember what it was like or how you felt when the Black Lives Matter movement started? What was your take on that?
Well, it's something that has been brewing for many years. There's been like many really bad things that have happened in this country past 10 years, but it wasn't until the death of George Floyd where finally somebody spoke up and it became an actual movement because for the longest time since this country was born, slavery and racism has been very prominent. Even though we got rid of slavery in the late 1800s, it's there's still um, racism and segregation going on, and even after get doing away with segregation, there was still people not giving others other minorities the same respect that everyone should get. So it was something that's been brewing for the longest time already.
Mhm. And do you think that would have happened if there wasn't COVID, or do you think that the movement wouldn't have been able to happen without COVID?
No, I feel like it was gonna happen either or, like, if COVID happened or COVID didn't happen, like it was gonna happen. Probably would have been earlier or even longer. We don't know, but it was gonna happen. It was bound to happen because before then there was, you know shootings of prominently of black churches. Things that happened in Charleston. It it's just been brewing for the longest time, so it was bound to happen.
Hmm. And sorry, I'm just gathering my question. Um, I think that's all. Oh, well, I guess I know what I want to say. So, do you have any messages or anything you want to say to our generation or even the next generation of people, of of young adults that are taking on movements and actually speaking out? You know, sometimes or during this pandemic, a lot of people maybe said that COVID was a good a good sorry, hold on, let me let me rephrase my question. So a lot of people um found the pandemic as a good opportunity to speak out online and speak out, with platforms, especially online. So, what would you say to the next generation on speaking up and give them any advice on anything that they are afraid to talk about in the future?
Honestly, like, the only advice I can give is just don't wait for somebody else to speak up. Do it yourself. Don't wait. Don't wait for a major time in history to do something. If you see something that be done, you gotta speak up. Speak up for yourself. That's my advice for them. Yeah.
All right. So, I know you answered this question about not working. I think during the pre-interview form, you mentioned that your family had to move houses because of COVID. What was that like?
Um,
Or maybe was that because of COVID or not really?
I don't know how to explain it.
It's okay. You could take your time or not answer or choose to not answer.
Let's come back to that question. I don't know how to like say it because
All right. Maybe what about the question from earlier? Did you get a chance to think about what challenges you faced at school besides besides the quarantine?
I remember that one. I remembered it earlier. The one thing that I did see was we had practice rooms in the music building, and that's where most people practice. And they had a strict rule that you know um, we the first floor would be even hours, and the second floor would be odd hours. So you had to like leave every hour to switch practice rooms so you can let the other one air out. And that made it very hard for many people because you know there's first of all less practice rooms being used or not being used, or less practice rooms to be able to be used. And there's like a good 300 people in the school of music here, so it made it really, really, really hard. It's like one floor might have just 25 practice rooms, I think. So being able to try to practice while other people are trying to practice made it a lot harder.
All right. So thinking about all everything that you just told me about the pandemic, um, in the future, what do you think is going to be the number one thing you're going to remember about the pandemic? Whether it was about music or your family, what do you think is the number one? thing that will stand out to you whenever you talk about COVID-19 to your maybe future kids or your future family?
I think the number one thing is the friendships I was able to get out of it. People, um, people only think negatively of what has happened out of COVID, but to be honest, I've only thought about the good things that has happened. I met friends that I've never thought I was ever going to meet. Being able to play music with people I don't think I was ever going to play with because they're 1,000 miles away. That's something I would tell my family in the future. You know, though all these things were happening, we all got together and we still made music. We still were talking with each other. We kept ourselves busy.
All right. And my last question for you is um what advice do you have for yourself if you could go back and change something that you wish you did during the pandemic? What would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself to don't don't stress about the little things and just keep going. I I was stressed about the little things during COVID. I don't know, like I don't explain. The things that I shouldn't have been worrying about, I worried about. So that's what I would give to myself. I had to change everything.
All right. And did you get a chance to work out what you wanted to say about what you told me in your pre-interview form about how you ended up moving houses actually during the pandemic?
Uh,
So you could choose to opt out that question.
I'll opt out of the question because I don't know. It's a little complicated right now, so kind of I don't explain it. Yeah, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad thing, but yeah.
All right. Yeah, I totally understand. Well, thank you so much for answering all these questions. Before we go, is there any last thing that you would like to say or like to mention in this interview?
Um, Treat everybody with respect, no matter what their race, color, religion, political belief. Respect everybody. Give the same respect that you'd give to yourself, to your parents. Just treat everybody equally. That's what I would say.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Vicente, for doing this interview with me. I'll let you know how this interview will be posted, and I'll let you know where you could find it soon. So thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.